and welcome to this reading vlog. So once again this week I'm just reading what I feel like. I have no real method or rhyme or reason into which books I'm picking off my TBR, but I am just doing it. So I have already read one book. Once again, I'm just on a binge and I couldn't stop myself. So I read the Jasad Heir, which was a special edition copy that I got from Lumacrate, but I read the ebook version that I got from my library because I didn't want to wreck the book. I ended up loving this. So I gave it a 4.25. Let me talk about it. So in this book, you have mostly humans, but there was a race of humans called the Casati, and they had magic, but they've been basically wiped out, run down. So you have this woman, she goes by Sylvia, but it's not her real name, and she is the last Jasad Heir. So she is the last of the royal family. She managed to escape. She has her powers, and she's trying to lay low. She's found herself a little found family situation with some other orphans until the king's son comes to the village. So he has the ability to scent out magic, basically, to find magic, to absorb that magic and take it from the person. And he finds her. So she thinks that's it, she's gone, she's dead, because they basically just execute any Jasads that they find. However, he ends up saying that she's going to be the champion for this tournament, this royal tournament. She's like, what? What is happening? What is going on? But she's got to roll with it, you know? So she's like, all right, I got to save my friends. I've got to somehow save myself. She's not really feeling particularly patriotic. Like, she's not wanting to go back to her home country and lead anybody. There are rebels of her race, two different parties that are acting in a terrorist-like manner, I guess you would say. That's what they're considered anyway by everybody else, because obviously they're just studies. So you've got that whole obviously mix of racism and hating that which you don't understand, and you fear, and suppression and oppression and that whole jazz, intermixed with obviously her own agenda, because she's a bit self-serving in a way, but we get it. I get it. I just really enjoyed it. So this is definitely an enemies to lovers, legit enemies to lovers. This guy is breaking her wrists and stabbing her with daggers, and she's doing the same thing to him because they hate each other. He's annihilated a lot of her kind, and she ain't happy about that, you know? So they are, at the beginning, I'm like, how am I going to ship these two people? There's full on hatred here. They are physically abusing each other. I might be mentally unwell because at the end of it, I'm like, you need to bang this guy. You guys need to hook up. Then something needs to happen here. He's very obviously cold and reserved and intelligent and calculating and lethal, and she's very fiery and passionate, but at the same time just as dangerous, just as lethal. So it's a cat and mouse situation going on. There's a lot of political twists and turns and intrigue, a lot of things that are revealed, identities revealed, betrayals occur, trials occur. So it's got that whole Hunger Games thing where she's, competing to win. Is she going to be the victor? Is she going to beat everybody? What's going to happen? It was a long book. I thought it was going to be a standalone. I'm like, okay, yes, but then it's not a standalone. It's not a standalone. It's like, God damn it. Yeah, it's just that typical fantasy kind of trope. It's got all the tropes, but it works. There's a formula and it works, and it was well done. It did take me 100 pages to get into it. So at the beginning, I was contemplating putting it down. I was just like, I don't know if I'm feeling it. But then once she starts going on the road with the King's Heir and all these other things start happening, I'm like, okay, I'm invested now. So I did polish it off in one day, and I did enjoy myself. Like I said, this was a legitimate enemies to lovers, and it was slow burn. It's very slow. If you're expecting a sex scene, don't. There's not one. There's not. So I don't want people to be disappointed thinking they're going to get some spice. It's very tame. I'm hoping that changes in the next book. Please, yes, unless another love interest comes into play, because that could happen, with these kind of fantasy books. You might be shipping them with that person, but it's like, actually, this is a Tamlin red herring. This is a real love interest. So who knows what's going to happen? But I am invested. Like I said, the world building was good. The magic system was interesting. The characters, intriguing. The plot's somewhat great. The romance is decent. So, it's got all the fixins. So like I said, I did give it 4.25. So that is one book that I've read this week. So today I'm off to go to the cafe, go to the library, do all those things. My youngest is doing a half day at a camp. She has a lot of anxiety. So we chose not to make her, I don't make her do anything pretty much. we just compromised on just go for a half day with your dad. You've got your support person there. If you go and you decide you don't like it, you can come home. You know, we're not pressuring. So she's there. Don't know how she's going to go. I have a feeling she's going to come home real soon. So I'm trying to go and get everything done just in case that does happen. The next book that I'm reading, I don't know yet. I haven't decided. I'll probably just pick one while I'm at the cafe and I'll touch base with you later on. Hello guys, it has been a long time. I think this is the longest I've ever gone in a vlog without an update, but I just had a lot of kind of stressful, negative, challenging things happen to me in this week that were very overwhelming for me to deal with. And I did turn to reading for comfort. So I've read a lot. I've got a lot of books to tell you about, but it's also why I have been MIA. I just do not want to film when I am going through it, you know? It's too hard. But let me tell you about the rest of the things I read this week, which is a lot because I was sad and stressed. So we have House of Roots and Ruin, which is the second in a series. So in this series, you had a bunch of sisters, like I think there was 12 of them, 6 of them died in tragic circumstances. So people thought they were cursed. This book is the story of the younger sister who's a painter, and she gets commissioned to go and do a portrait of this young gentleman who's very dashing and handsome, but is in a wheelchair because of an accident they had when they were a child. And some weird shit goes on. So this is a very gothic book. This one includes the language of flowers very heavily. So botany is involved in some supernatural ways in this book. There are a lot of twists. I didn't particularly love the romance in this, I will say, but it was interesting. You know, it started off a bit slow. Once again, this was a slow start, but it picked up. And I was invested. So I ended up giving this one a 4 stars. Then we had Clytemnestra, which was a Greek mythology retelling, and I DNF this book. So look, Greek mythology is very much more miss than hit for me. I need something, I think, different, a twist, but I still need excellent writing and a plot as well, but nothing that's too predictable. If it sticks too closely to the mythology, I just feel like I'm reading the same book over and over again. And that was the case with this one. And it's just heavy and dark and sad and depressing. And I was like, I don't feel like reading that. Then I read Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Sanderson. So this had a cute cover. This was such a hard one to read. I've ended up going with a 3 because this was really all over the shop. It was very confusing. In this world, you have 2 worlds. One of them, you have the painter, and his job is to protect the citizens from these nightmares that prey upon them while they're sleeping. And he does so by painting these nightmares into something else. And through that transformation, it sort of stops the nightmare. And then in the other world, you have Yumi, who's this sort of revered being whose job is just to stack stones. And by stacking stones, she draws spirits to her and then asks these spirits to do things like heat the water or light this person's house. And she pretty much doesn't do anything for herself. She's waited on hand and foot. And then something happens and these 2 characters collide and there's a bit of body switching going on. There's so much stuff in here that I can't even describe it all. It's very confusing. It has Studio Ghibli vibes, so I did like that. It's very steeped in Japanese and Korean culture. This was touted as a romance. I wouldn't agree with that. This was not really a romance book for me. You know, it didn't hit me in that way. So I've given it 3 because I still cared enough to see how it resolved. Like I still forced myself to finish it, you know, I wanted to see how it ended, so it's a 3. Then I read Hamlet Is Not Okay, which is a middle grade book. My daughter likes to give me 1 book a month of hers to read. This was not for me. If I was going to rate it, I would give it 2.5, but I don't rate middle grade books unless they're 4 stars and up because I'm not the intended audience. But Yeah, in this one, you've got two teenagers who end up going into Hamlet, the world of Hamlet, and living in there, and then having those characters come back to their world. But there was a lot of Shakespeare, obviously, in this because it's based on Hamlet, which is Shakespearean. I don't like Shakespeare. It doesn't bother me. I don't like the dialect and the vernacular of it. So hearing the Shakespearean quotes was just like, I feel like I'm reading Hamlet, which I didn't enjoy the first time. So this one wasn't for me. Then I read The Wildflower and the Wolf. This is a Stacy Reid novel, and Stacy Reid is my favorite historical romance author. Multiples of her books have been 5 stars for me. This one is a 3.5. So yeah, it's not high, but it's still good. Like I still had a good time. So in this one, it starts off with a gender bend situation where the mother's given birth to her second child, very difficult, believes she's going to die if she has to do it again. It's a girl. The father wants a son, so she just pretends that her second daughter is a boy and raises her as a male. And then that child decides to stay and keep up the ruse because of the freedoms that are given towards men. She can go and study, she can ride a horse astride, she can walk about town. She doesn't want to give those liberties away. So she decides to keep up the ruse and act like a boy. And then she meets a duke. So her studies are in psychology. There's a duke who was lost in the wilderness for 10, 12 years, comes back, and the parents want to re-civilize him. He's a wild man. So you basically have Tarzan and Jane. I'm not joking. It is pretty much Tarzan and Jane. So if you like Tarzan and Jane, then you'll love this book. And I did enjoy it. It's 3.5 stars. I didn't love it, but I still had a good time. You know, I think Stacy Reid still hits when she doesn't hit. You know what I mean? Like 3.5 stars is like the worst probably that I rate her books. But yeah, if you love Tarzan and Jane and the whole thing of like a woman pretending to be a man, this is your jam. Then I read 101 essays that will change the way you think. So basically this is like all of those inspirational quotes you see on Insta or Pinterest and just expanded a little bit, but not in a really clever or masterful way. Just felt very basic bitch to me. And I didn't find it motivational or inspirational, like any more than just the quotes on their own would have been. So this wasn't for me. I'm not going to rate it because I just don't feel comfortable rating it. But if I did, it probably would be in 2.5 stars because like I said, I just didn't really get anything from it. And I didn't really enjoy it, to be honest, but I read it. And then I read Miracle Pill, which is a non-fiction book. And to sum it up, basically move your body. Do not be too sedentary. Every little bit helps. And by that, I mean, try not to sit for longer than an hour at a time. Just even if you just get up, go make yourself a cup of tea and come back. Things like that really do add up and help your well-being and your health. So this was, a lot to do with movement. Obviously the same thing where they recommend people do a mixture of different types of movements. So cardio, strength training, and flexibility and mobility. Like those 3 are really vital in keeping your health and your vigor. But yeah, look, it was fine. It wasn't amazing. It was a bit repetitive and dull in some areas, but it did do its job where it inspired me to add more incidental movement in my day, like to add more neat. So that's like non-exercise like related activities. So fidgeting or just tapping your foot or just pacing, just little bits of movement. So I'm not completely still all the time because I am a potato. If you put me down, I will just sit there and sprout where I am. I'm not someone that's prone to being naturally inclined to exercise. Like anything that is purposeful exercise, I really hate, but I can just get up and move. Like I can just get up and go to the kitchen and get myself a snack, or I can just do some jumping jacks, you know, like for a couple of seconds just to break up the monotony. So it did inspire me to move my body a lot more. So, you know, it did its job. And then the Inseparables is what I read next. So this month was a Women in Translation month. So if you did notice over the month, I did read quite a few books written by female authors that were translated works. This is one of those. So this is Simone de Beauvoir, and I do tend to like French translations. Like I do. I did give this one 3, and that's because more of it's the story. I did enjoy the writing. The story is based on her real life friendship with a young girl. So it follows 2 young girls through their childhood as they grow up into young women and the friendship between them while they're living their life in France. And it was sweet and it was lovely to read. It has some tragedy to it, but it's more about the vibes. It's more about just the idea of friendship rather than like the storyline, so to speak. There was a lot of touching upon religion as an aspect in this. One of the girls religious, one of the girls finding herself pulling away from God and religion. So that was interesting to read. Also too, how they navigate growing up and wanting to date or have romance. I did enjoy it. It was fine. It's a 3-star read. So those were all of the rest of the books that I read for this vlog. I can't even say a week because I think I've gone over a week. But overall, yeah, it was decent. Not too bad. So I enjoyed myself, and thank you for sticking along with me. And I hope that wherever you are, you're having a wicked morning, afternoon, or evening. And as always, stay wild, star child.